Das alles ist Zeit! Die große Zeit ist jetzt angebrochen. Deutschland ist nun erwacht. Die Macht haben wir nun in Deutschland gewonnen. Nun gilt es, das deutsche Volk zu gewinnen. Ich weiß es, meine Kameraden, es ist euch wohl oft schwer gefallen, wenn ihr meint, es müsse nun ein Wandel kommen, und er kam nicht, und immer wieder muss er euch nach gerichtet werden. Es muss weitergekämpft werden, es geht nicht, ihr dürft nicht handeln, ihr müsst gehorchen, ihr müsst euch fügen, ihr müsst euch diesem unerhörten Zwang beugen.
Following the re-entry of the National Socialist German Workers' Party to German federal elections in 1925, the party saw an era of exponential growth in public support. The party grew from a small political gathering to a nationwide party supported by millions of Germans. In 1933, the Nazis obtained a 43.9% of the federal vote, enabling them absolute rule and enabling Hitler absolute rule over Germany in the years to come. But how did this happen, and who exactly voted for the Nazis?
The vote for Nazis could be described under 5 main societal aspects: age, geographical location, class and job, gender, and finally, religion. To put it all into perspective, Germany by 1933 is a country in great economic turmoil and shaky politics spurred by economic failure and dissatisfaction with Weimar democracy. Political parties such as the SPD and KPD were getting popular votes because of number 1, Weimar socialist traditions, and number 2, the void resulting from economic failure, respectively. Religion held a great importance in the lives of many, seeing that German society at the time was on the verge of a liberal change, not yet emerging from it. The effects of religious conservatism prevailed in voting results, mainly in competition between Protestant and Catholic voters. The working class at the time constituted and the majority of society back in the 1930s, so the success of any party relied heavily on the support shown by the workforce, especially the young ones. Finally, German society still held the sentiments of nationalism from old ages, especially among the older, aristocratic generation, which was vital to enlarge the voting numbers favoring Nazis.
Overall, the northeast of Germany displayed great tendency to vote for the Nazis. Regions such as Pommern, Frankfurt-Oder, and Ostpreußen supplied over 55% population votes in favor of Nazis. An explanation could be drawn from this. Areas of the northeast were of the old Prussian Empire, and the extremely nationalistic views put forth by the Nazis sparked sentiment within residents of these areas, which in turn added to the Nazi vote turnout. Another geographical aspect to the vote was the difference between voters living in urban areas or rural areas. As for urban dwellers, they did not display significant support to the Nazis in comparison to rural areas, even with the specific Nazi propaganda directed to city dwellers. Nazi support in Großstadt, also known as cities with more than 100,000 inhabitants, such as Hamburg, Berlin, Cologne, and Munich, was 10% lower than the national average for all of the parties. But most of the support came from small farming communities. Evidently, 50% of first-time voters lived in towns with less than 5,000 inhabitants, which was obviously the young rural population. Instead, urban city dwellers settled for political parties such as the KPD, the Communists, or the SPD, due to the industrial-oriented jobs in cities. Many policies of the KPD and the SPD targeted industry, so that attracted many votes to the KPD and SPD, on the contrary to Nazis.
Within the constant rallies of the Nazis, a new form of promoting political ideology was introduced: cinemas. Alfred Hugenberg, a rich newspaper owner who worked with Hitler against the Young Plan in 1929, gave the NSDAP access to his huge media empire, which included newspapers, cinemas, and other forms of mainstream coverage. This helped Nazis spread their ideas amongst the middle-class citizens. But cinemas also had a negative effect to the Nazi support, since cinemas also projected civil and liberal programs, which deviated votes away from the radical Nazi ideology.
As for religion, the main distinction of Nazi voters was between the Catholic and Protestant Germans. Generally, Protestants gave their votes to Nazis more so than Catholics for a variety of reasons. One, specialized Catholic parties such as the Center Party attracted Catholics away since conservative thought was very prevalent in Germany. So Catholic parties would tend to the needs of Catholics more so than Nazis, more specifically so than Nazis. Second of all, the Catholic Church structure operated as a perfect parallel to Nazi party structure, starting all the way up from the Pope to the local priest. That way, Catholics could spread their ideologies and communicate more with the members of the church efficiently, even more efficient than the Nazis themselves. Overall, twice as much Protestants voted for Nazis in comparison to Catholics in 1933.
Another huge classification of voters is class and occupation. Nazi ideals appealed to the urban working class, which was a huge sector of German society. Moreover, peasants from rural areas voted for Nazis to stop the imports of foreign grain and further implication of nationalist ideology. Middle-class voters hoped for the return of authoritarianism experienced under the Kaiser, where life was prosperous. The failure of Weimar democracy also played a huge role in setting Nazis in the lead of the vote.
Nazi votes weren't equally dispersed around all German age groups. An interesting huge selection of the youth and the elderly casted votes for the Nazis for certain reasons. As for the youth, they constituted a huge section of the working class, which was a huge part of the Nazi votes, as mentioned previously. For the youth that aspire for a bright German future, communism wasn't a proper selection, so the NSDAP was the only alternative to them, at least the only logical alternative. Accordingly, the discipline of the SA, which was in turn a force mainly young, along with continuous aggression against the communists, which was not viewed very positively among the youth, attracted a lot of young men. The elderly, however, held a great number of World War I veterans and former Freikorps members, who shared similar traditional ideologies to Hitler and very nationalistic views. So the preservation of tradition, and Hitler being a carrier of tradition and someone who would continue German classical tradition, was an idea worthy of support from the old German population.
Finally, gender was essential to the vote in the early stages of Nazi rise up until the 1933 elections, where women actually surpassed men by casting 6.5 million votes. A logical reason behind this might be the emphasis on family values and stability in propaganda posters. Many of the posters focused on the importance of the woman in the family and how she binds it together. So, by emphasizing the importance of women in society, Nazis were able to attract many women to the voting ballot.
It is very important to note that even with specific parts of German society displaying significant support to the Nazis in votes, the NSDAP ultimately became a nationwide supported political party. Since support was never static in every area and it was never constant, Nazis needed to change their policies to either consolidate support in certain areas or reappeal to gain more support from the population of a certain area. The Nazi Party ultimately gained a 49.3% of the federal votes in 1933. So technically, it fitted Hitler's description of a Volksparty, or a nationwide party, a party supported by everyone, of the people and for the people. Thank you all for listening. This was our history project. Who voted for the Nazis and why exactly did they do so?